Something unusual happened on Indian television last week.
I want to tell the government, just because you have the right to do something does not mean you end up doing something. Now, this is information given by domain experts, by people who know.
Arnab Goswami suddenly went emotional about an environmental issue, about the Aravalli hills. He wasn't sarcastic, he sounded genuinely upset, angry that an ancient mountain range might be in danger. And millions of people watching him did what anyone would do. They panicked. Because if Arnab is worried, something must be terribly wrong. But the truth is, Arnab's reaction did not come from malice. It came from possible confusion. The same confusion flooding your social media, your WhatsApp groups, and YouTube panels. The Supreme Court's ruling was technical. The maps were scientific. The vocabulary like local relief, lowest binding contour, range connectivity meant nothing to the average citizen because they understood none of it. And into this vacuum of clarity exploded a storm of misinformation. Before anyone read the 95-page committee report, before anyone understood the judgment, before anyone looked at a single contour map, hashtags told an entire country that 90% of the Aravallis had been handed over to the miners. Fear spread faster than facts, and suddenly, even senior journalists, allies, influencers, activists, everyone found themselves reacting to an event that they did not fully understand. So I went through the 95-page report, and this explainer is not about blaming Arnab Goswami. It's about understanding why even seasoned voices fell into the fog, and why once you clear that fog, the real story of Aravalli looks nothing like what the headlines actually screamed. Because to understand what is happening in 2025, you must understand what happened in the 23 years preceding that. And that is where our story begins today. The Aravalli range, which is about 1.44 lakh square kilometers, spreads across 37 districts and is one of the oldest mountain systems in the world. But for decades, it lived with a very bizarre problem. Nobody could say with legal certainty where the Aravalli actually was. Rajasthan, and only Rajasthan, had a formal definition since 2006, a scientific one based on Richard Murphy's landform classification. It identified hills as landforms rising 100 meters above local relief, protected their slopes, and treated everything within the lowest binding contour as a part of the hill. Haryana had no definition. Gujarat and Delhi had no definition. Think about that. Three major states with Aravalli hills had no map to point to. There were no contour lines, no legal classification, no standard of enforcement. So a miner could look at a slope, blast it, dig into it, and simply say, this is not Aravalli Hills. I didn't know it was Aravalli Hills. And in most cases, the state did not have the paperwork to argue otherwise. This was not an administrative gap. It was a very systemic flaw. And into that flaw poured the largest illegal mining ecosystem northern India has ever seen. In 2002, the Supreme Court banned mining in the parts of the Aravalli. It was supposed to be a turning point, but it became something else entirely. Between 2005 and 2012, right under the nose of the ban, governments issued 4 new mining leases, renewed 18 old leases, illegally extracted 16.22 lakh tons of stone, wiped out 31 hillocks, allowed more than 3,000 illegal mining sites to flourish across the range. 31 hills were destroyed, not chipped, not damaged, completely destroyed. In 2015, when officials from the Central Empowered Committee tried inspecting these locations, they were physically attacked. This was not an industry. This was a mafia, a multi-crore parallel economy powered by ambiguity. During this entire period, the Aravalli kept on shrinking. Hill after hill disappeared. Mining trucks moved very freely. Illegal crushers hummed day and night. The ban existed only on paper, but the definition did not. And without the definition, the ban was a blindfold. Yet the panic that we see today, where was it? The real tragedy is that Aravallis didn't die in 2025. Aravalli had been dying for 23 years, silently, systematically, violently, and everyone who is shouting today has missed it. Because the truth is, nobody understood the disease. The mining mafia did not survive despite the ban. It survived because of the ban's vagueness. The scientists and the lawmakers realized this. And finally in 2024, the Supreme Court said, we must fix the root problem. We need a uniform scientific definition of the Aravallis. So it created a high-powered committee comprising the Environment Ministry, the Forest Department of all the Aravalli states, the FSI, GSI, CEC, and asked them to do something no one had ever done before. Draw the Aravalli map properly, scientifically, across all the states, once and for all. The committee did not invent a random definition. It took Rajasthan's 2006 criteria, the only definition that had stood unchallenged for nearly 2 decades, and made it even stronger. They used satellite contour maps, they used the Survey of India topo sheets, they adopted the concept of lowest binding contour, meaning if a landform rises 100 meters above a local relief, then everything inside the contour, including the slopes, the foothills, the valleys, the connecting hillocks, all become a part of the Aravalli ecosystem, even if their absolute height is below 100 meters. This is explicit in the committee report. This was not a dilution as people are making it out to be. This was elevation, a more robust, more objective, more foolproof definition than India had ever seen. 2 hills within 500 meters now formed an Aravalli range, and the land between them, the valley, the wildlife corridor, the ecological flow zone, became automatically protected. The definition closed every loophole illegal miners had relied on for years. No more arguing on the roadside, no more this is just a hillock, no more this slope does not count. For the first time in Indian environmental governance, the Aravalli became map locked, and the people who profited from the grey area suddenly found themselves standing in bright daylight. On 20 November 2025, the Supreme Court accepted this definition, and then in a move nobody expected, the court froze all new mining leases across the entire Aravalli landscape until the ICFRE prepares a district-wise landscape-level sustainable mining plan. In other words, no one gets a new license, no one digs a new pit, no one touches the Aravalli until we scientifically decide where mining is permanently banned, where restoration is mandatory, and where, if anywhere, limited sustainable extraction is possible. This is the strictest the court has ever been in the history of this case. It protects areas and makes it untouchable. The eco-sensitive zones remain untouchable. Tiger corridors also remain untouchables, and the Campa plantations remain untouchables along with the wetlands. Even if a sanctuary's ESZ is less than a kilometer, the court mandated the full kilometer of no mining buffer anyway. This is not the language of dilution. This is the language of preservation, and yet social media declared the exact opposite. Here is where it reached its peak, when someone online assumed that because of the definition begins at 100 meters, everything below is free for mining. It's not. It is not even close to that. The committee states clearly, everything inside the lowest binding of the contour is protected regardless of its height. Ranges, slopes, valleys, hillocks, connectivity, everything gets protected. And this is stated unambiguously in the report accepted by the court. And what about the actual data? It destroys 90% claim entirely. The Aravalli landscape runs across 37 districts across 1,44,000 square kilometers. You know how much legal mining happens today? Just 277 kilometers. That is 0.19%. Not 90%, not 10%, not even 1%. Delhi has zero mining. Rajasthan's mining footprint in the Aravalli districts is anywhere between 0.8 to 2.1%. Haryana barely registers. Gujarat very minuscule. This is all documented in the official analysis. Yet the myth spread like wildfire because fear always outruns logic and facts. When the Supreme Court shut the loopholes, froze new leases, introduced map verification definitions, and mandated drones, CCTV task forces, and district level enforcement, the ground shifted under the feet of the illegal operators. For 23 years, they've thrived in blindness. Now the lights were on. This panic created a vacuum where misinformation surged. Activists misunderstood the definition and influencers misinterpreted the maps, and journalists, being journalists, reacted to the outrage before even reading the entire judgment. And even strong, influential voices on television were swept into the confusion. So Arnab's reaction was not wrong. It was very human. It was the reaction of someone who cared but perhaps got taken away because of the entire storm of misinformation. The Supreme Court's judgment did not open the Aravallis. It closed every escape route illegal mining ever had. It sealed the cracks, it defined the boundaries, it mapped the slopes, it protected the valleys, it froze new permits, it empowered forest departments and the police with technology and clarity to do what they had to do. For the first time in decades, Aravallis is not just a mountain range, it is a legally recognized, scientifically mapped, enforceable, ecological entity. And if you cut through the noise, the hashtags, the panic, and the primetime monologues, here is what remains of the whole thing. The Aravalli controversy is not a story of betrayal. It is a story of misunderstanding, not a story of environmental destruction, but a story of long overdue protection. And certainly not a story of government opening the hills, but the story of the judiciary finally closing the wounds that have been bleeding since 2002. It is messy, it is emotional, it is complicated, but at its very core, it is very simple. The Supreme Court did not weaken the Aravallis. It finally gave the Aravallis a fighting chance that it long deserved.